All right, let's get right into it. Today we're going to break down a pretty significant presidential directive, one that's all about changing how federal money gets spent. We're talking about Executive Order 14218, which is officially titled Ending Taxpayer Subsidization of Open Borders. So, our job here is to unpack what it actually says and what it's telling the government to do.
But first, let's do a real quick refresher. What even is an executive order? Well, think of it as a direct command from the president to the federal agencies about how they need to operate. Now, this isn't a new law passed by Congress, but you better believe it carries the force of law inside the executive branch. And that difference is really important for understanding both the power and the limits of the order we're looking at today.
And that brings us to the main event, Executive Order 14218. It was signed on February 19, 2025. With any of these orders, the key to understanding them is in the text itself. So let's start right where the document does, with its purpose.
Okay, so every executive order kicks off by explaining its purpose. We're diving straight into Section 1 to get a handle on the why behind this whole thing, and we're going to look at the exact language it uses.
Now, to really get the order's logic, you have to know about something called PRWORA. That's a mouthful, right? It stands for the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act, a huge federal law from back in 1996. The executive order points to this specific law over and over again as its legal foundation.
So the order literally lifts a quote straight from that 1996 law. It highlights this idea that it's national policy for non-citizens to be self-sufficient. This concept is basically the first pillar holding up the order's entire argument.
And here comes the second pillar. The order pulls another direct quote from that same law, PRWORA. This one frames public benefits as a kind of magnet, an incentive for illegal immigration. The logic presented here is that getting rid of this incentive is a compelling government interest. So Section 1 wraps all this up by listing three main goals. First, uphold the rule of law, specifically as defined by that 1996 Act. Second, stop wasting taxpayer money. And third, make sure benefits are protected for American citizens who need them. All right, so that was the why. Now let's get into the how and the what. Section 2, this is really the beating heart of the order. It's where we find the specific, actionable commands for all the federal agencies. So that's the big question, right? It's one thing to talk about your goals, but what does this order actually tell the massive machinery of the federal government to go out and do? Well, when you boil it all down, it's a three-step directive. And here are those three steps. First, agencies have to identify every single program that gives benefits to illegal aliens. Second, they have to ensure that the money they send to states isn't subsidizing what the order calls sanctuary policies. Those are local rules that might limit cooperation with federal immigration agents. And third, they've got to enhance their verification systems to get better at screening out people who aren't eligible.
And they're on a clock. The Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, plus a few other White House offices, they get just 30 days. That's it, from the signing date to do an even deeper dive. They have to find all other sources of this kind of federal funding and come up with more recommendations to get all government spending in line with the order's goals.
The order's also got some teeth. Section 2 is very clear. If any agencies find that federal benefits are being used improperly, they have to send those cases over to the Department of Justice and Homeland Security for, and I'm quoting the text here, appropriate action.
Okay. Now we get to the part of any government document that is so important, the legal fine print. Section 3 is called General Provisions, and this is where it lays out the legal guardrails. Basically, it clarifies what the order can and, maybe more importantly, cannot do. And that fine print is pretty clear about what this order does not do. For one, it doesn't take away any legal authority that agencies already have. It also doesn't suddenly create a new right for you or me or anyone else to sue the government. And at the same time, the order itself has limits. It has to be implemented in a way that's consistent with all existing laws. And it all depends on the money being available, the funds that Congress has to approve.
So, we've gone through the why, the how, and the legal limits. But what happens on day one, the day after this order is signed? Let's do a quick recap of the immediate, concrete actions that get put into motion.
So, just to sum up the immediate next steps, federal agencies start auditing their own programs. That 30-day clock starts ticking for the OMB to deliver its big report. The work to upgrade verification systems begins, and any misuse of funds that's found gets sent off for potential legal action. These are the direct, immediate consequences.
At the end of the day, what we have here is a directive that's trying to make a fundamental shift in how federal dollars are used, and it's all based on an interpretation of a law from way back in 1996. The document itself, it sets the policy on paper. But the real question, the one that really matters, is what happens when that policy on paper runs smack into the complex reality of the real world. That's what we'll all be watching.